I'm joined here today by the one and only Christien Savoie, who is right now, I'm assuming, just like everybody else in quarantine, has, of course, the undefeated record. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you during these crazy times?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. I'm sure just like everybody else trying to survive, man. How are you doing? I assume you're currently in quarantine?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I was actually in New Zealand when this whole thing happened. I was down training at City Kickboxing, and yeah, and I had to get sent back home like 2 weeks here in Canada. So yeah, it's been a crazy couple
When you
weeks.
say send back home, like, did those guys in the gym have to tell you that you needed to come back home? I mean, what sort of happened there?
No, so basically, City was shutting down due to the whole Corona City Kickboxing that is, and I had to make a decision, man. At the time, this thing was relatively new, but our government was encouraging everybody to come home. So, my girlfriend and I made the decision to come home to Canada during this whole thing. But yeah, man, it's crazy times.
Did you give any thoughts of potentially staying in New Zealand, or did it seem obvious to you that going back home really was the best decision?
Yeah, man, part of me really wanted to stay, because my thought process was like, all right, I'm already on the other side of the world. Um, it just kind of seemed like it was all happening for a reason, like maybe there was a purpose behind me being there at that specific time. But in the end of the day, man, like my family wanted me home, my girlfriend wanted to come home. So I think in the end, it was the right decision. But, it's definitely inspired me to go back once this whole thing's said and done.
And a lot of people during quarantine, they all talk about, trying to stay in shape, trying to get enough exercise, eat less Cheetos and things like that. As a professional athlete yourself, how is that going? Are you able to train correctly, stay in shape like you should?
So I went like, I've been training really hard from home. I got a couple kettlebells and stuff like that. Then, I was training really hard when I got back. Then, like a lot of people, the whole quarantine pigging out thing starting to set in. So I did a 7 day fast, not just a couple days ago actually, to get myself, in to get myself not so ballooned from everything that I've been doing. So, but yeah, no, I've been relatively keeping my things together, man, and doing what I can from home.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned the fast. I did see that on Instagram, and I wanted to ask you about it because it seemed like a unique thing. What did you do for the fast? I assume you're not just drinking water all day. Like, what's this fast kind of look like for you?
So the first 5 days I did what's called the snake diet. There's a guy I follow. His name's Cole Robinson, and essentially it's just water, and it's got like all the essential electrolytes in it, so like potassium, sodium, magnesium, and it's just enough, so you're not electrolyte depleted. So yeah, man, I did that for 5 days, and I was working out hard throughout the whole thing. And the last 2 days, I ended up doing a dry fast, which is nothing at all. And yeah, so I went 7 days without eating to kind of balance myself back out.
That's pretty crazy. But the most important question is, when you were able to eat again, what's the first thing you ate?
Oh man, so the only thing I regret is not prepping properly. I kind of jumped right into this.
Yeah.
If I could go back, I probably would have like pre-made like a big steak and just really clean food. But no, I broke, man, and I didn't like eat junk food by any means, but I just once that 7 day hit, man, I was pretty hungry, like you could imagine, right? So I just started
Right.
eating everything in the cupboards. But since then, I've got back on track, and weight's good, everything's good.
That's good. So I do want to talk to you about your career a little bit. The goal is to have people understand and get to know you a little bit better. So I want to start with, the most basic questions. How did you get into MMA?
So I come from a Taekwondo background. I started doing Taekwondo when I was 6 years old. Um, Yeah, I competed in nationals and stuff like that, and then I was a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, so I was pretty good. It was around the age of 13, 14 where I started to lose interest. And I saw my very first MMA fight at that time. It was Matt Hughes against Carlos Newton 2. I don't know if you remember that fight or I've seen it, but Carlos Newton had Matt Hughes in a triangle, and
Right.
Matt Hughes came up and slammed him on his head and knocked him out. And me as a 13, 14-year-old kid was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's probably what I'm going to do the rest of my life, and joined the local MMA gym shortly after that.
And so there's a lot of controversy with that fight you mentioned. People are saying Carlos Newton got slammed because Matt Hughes went out. Other people are saying, no, it should have been a draw, stuff like that. Being that this is the fight you mentioned, what's your take on it?
Yeah, that was interesting, man. I mean, in the end, yeah, I'm not opposed to it being a draw because technically Matt was out, but yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tough call, but it's tough to, you know, call it a draw when one guy got dropped on his head and knocked out cold.
Right.
I don't know, man. That's a tough call. What do you think?
Uh, putting me on the spot. I don't know, man. For me, it was you see Matt Hughes kind of eventually jump up and figure out he won. So for me, it's like it's good enough. I feel like if it was a draw, it would have taken away from the historic aspect of that fight for sure.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make. The fact that, like, like Matt was, he might have been out for a second, but he got back up right away, right? It's the difference between
Right.
maybe getting choked out for a second and being dropped on your head. So, yeah.
And so you do come from a Taekwondo background. I think a lot of people, when they think Taekwondo, they think the kicks and stuff. How did that translate into your MMA game?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it, man, is, the kicks and dexterity and stuff like that, and the movement. And I think coming from a traditional background, and now having like a real solid base in traditional Thai kickboxing and boxing, but knowing how to use my traditional martial arts, it really throws guys off. It just coming from angles of attacks, and like you mentioned, the kicks and things that people aren't used to. So I definitely use it to my advantage.
And so you currently are undefeated both as an amateur and as a professional. Is there a certain pressure that comes with that? Because, of course, being undefeated so long, you haven't tasted defeat and things like that. Do you feel any extra pressure?
I wouldn't say I have any extra pressure. If anything, man, it just it's good for my ego, and it makes me want to perform to the expectation. You know what I'm saying? And it's not. I don't get like overwhelmed by that feeling. If anything, it makes me hungry. It makes me strive to be that level of competitor. You know what I'm saying?
And so right now you are currently in quarantine. So I know MMA's come to a halt, but what do you think's next for you at this point? You're undefeated. You're at a good age. We've got things like the Contender Series, Bellator and stuff like that. What do you think's next for you at this point?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm. I think I'm ready for the UFC at this point. Like, and it couldn't have happened any better timing. Like you mentioned, I'm at that right age. I'm 27 now. Like I feel like I'm in my prime. I didn't rush anything. And I know I'm at that level. I've trained with the best guys in the world. I know what I'm capable of. So everything is perfect timing. That being said, if I got to win another fight or two, it is what it is. I'm not stressing out about it. Like you mentioned, I feel like I'm at that perfect age right now. So if it happens right after this whole Corona thing, or I need one, maybe two more fights, but I feel like I'm right there, to be honest with you.
And so for you currently in the regional scene, what's your goal? I mean, I assume long term you want to be champion of a big organization. Is it right now just to kind of get into the UFC or get into a big organization? What's sort of your goals for your career so far?
There's no debate about I want to be in the UFC. I get offers from other promotions, but yeah, man, I just want my fair shot in the UFC at welterweight. Um, yeah, so that's my only goal, man, and I'll beat anybody I got to beat to get there.
And do you think there's a potential we could see you in the Contender Series, or do you think you're at that point where you could potentially skip all that and just get straight to, if they have a card in Canada or something like that?
No, you could definitely see me on Contender Series, man. And I'm down for that. I got offered a spot last year. But long story short, they kind of messed up my weight class. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. If I get a shot at 170, yeah, I'm in 100%. And yeah, I'm down for Contender Series. I'm down for the UFC. Anything that has the UFC attached
Right.
to it, I'm down.
And
And
so,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead. Please finish.
All I was gonna say is the one of the major reasons why I want to be in the UFC specifically is just because that's where USADA is at. That's where the highest level drug testing is at, and that's really important to me. And and just representing that UFC brand, man, that's been my goal since I was a kid, right? So it's just a big pride and ego thing for me to hit that mark.
And so, why is the drug testing so important for you? Is there, maybe something that happened on the regional scene, or you've seen some things behind the scene? I mean, why is that aspect so important for you?
Yeah, both of those. But it's something I've been, passionate about since I started this, man. I just think there are cheaters in the sport, and it's just not something I want to be associated with, man. Like, it's yeah, it's always been mind-boggling to me how people could cheat and consider themselves winning and fighting. And I think I'm very passionate about being a clean athlete, and I know the UFC is above that right now with the USADA testing and all that.
All right, so I have just one more for you. I know it's kind of a complicated question with all the craziness that's going on, but realistically, when do you think you'll be back out in the cage, and where do you think that's going to be? As tough as that is to answer.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Hopefully this summer. Um, yeah, man. Like my goal prior to this whole thing was that there was a UFC Canada coming to Saskatoon.
Right.
I think that I had a good shot at that. That was in June. So I mean, if that's still happening, I'm open to that. As you mentioned, Contender Series, I'm open to that. But if not, if I got to hop on another local card, let's just assume everything goes back to the way it is
Right.
around summertime. I hope, and yeah, man. Anything that comes up this summer, I'm in.
All right, we look forward to it. Hopefully, things go back to normal. We see you fight out there again soon. Thanks so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for reaching out.